Welcome back to Become a Calm Mama. I'm Darlene Childress. I'm the host of this podcast as well as a life and parenting coach. And I'm already laughing because today's episode is called Parenting Pivots. And I'm going to talk about attunement and response flexibility and how to be like in the moment with your kids and be able to pivot when things are going rough or when things aren't going as planned or your kids aren't aligned with what you want to do. And I'm laughing because as I sat down to record this, I had this beautiful iced coffee that I just made myself. And it was like really, really tasty. And I was like, wow, this is delicious. This is almost like a Starbucks. It's so good. And I was like getting ready for this podcast and I was in a good headspace. And then I literally dropped the entire thing on my desk and it swooshed all over my clothes, stained my white top, and got all over the carpet. And I just had to pause and laugh at the universe or whatever, because here I am going to talk about pivoting and being flexible and staying calm when things aren't going as planned. And here I am covered in coffee. So I, of course, am going to pause and go change my clothes and clean this up. But I wanted to record this intro just because it was so fresh and so funny to me. So, okay. This episode is going to be all about parenting pivots and how to shift moods, dealing with grumpy moods, dealing when your kids don't want to do what you want to do, when things don't go as planned, and give you some strategies for how to pivot when those things happen. So before we get into all of the strategies, I kind of want to give you a few examples. 2 involve cooking and 1 involves bike riding. So the first one, this happened a long time ago. There used to be this show on TV. I think it was on TV. I never watched it, but it was called Nanny 911. And it was this woman who would come into your house and like help you parent your children. And, I don't know. I don't really have a lot of opinions about her. She was very focused on time out, which I don't really teach. I teach more of a time in model or a compassionate self-regulation model where you kind of you don't punish your kid. You don't say, go to the corner so that you can calm down and then come back when you're ready. Or because you're 2, you have to sit in the corner for 2 minutes. That's more of a punitive model. The model I teach is a little bit more of a connected model where I can help you co-regulate by a time in, or I can trust that you can self-regulate on your own, but I'm not sending you away in order to get calm. I'm just giving you an opportunity to reset your nervous system. Maybe a little kid needs to do that by themselves, play in their room, cry, throw some stuffed animals around, things like that. Okay, so I'm at this event and Nanny 911 is there and she's speaking. And I'm a fairly new mom. My kids are 4 and 2. And one of my friends asked, if I want to bake with my kids and while I'm baking with them, they make a big mess or they don't want to do it or they just keep eating the chocolate chips and I find myself really, really frustrated. And the Nanny 911 answer was, well, don't bake with your kids. If you don't like it and they don't seem to like it, or you don't like who you are while you're doing it, you don't have to do that. You could just bake on your own. And I remember my friend, I looked over at her and she had like kind of a light bulb moment like, oh, I don't have to do this thing that I like to do with my children if they don't like to do it or I don't like doing it with them. She was like, it was very freeing for her. She was like, oh, wait, I have permission to not do this thing with my kids. And I love that. I want you to know that there's all sorts of things that you might think you're supposed to do with your children that you don't have to. And that might be the pivot itself, is just letting yourself off the hook of things you're supposed to do. Like play trains on the ground or play dress up or teach your kid how to drive. I mean, I did have to teach my kids how to drive, but it was very, very stressful for me. And I did try to outsource that. I tried to pivot out of it. And my husband was like, well, I don't want to do it. Let's just pay for more lessons. And I was like, well, I don't want to pay for more lessons. That's expensive. So anyway, I did teach them to drive and it was terrible. But I noticed that there were times, even this pivot concept is that I would say, okay, let's go for a drive. Like, you can drive home from the grocery store or whatever it was. And then maybe while I was at the grocery store with them or we were running an errand, I could feel myself getting so super anxious. And I would just say, you know what? I changed my mind. I don't want to do this. Or they would be driving and I would be too much like, you're too close to the side, like, tense. And I realized that my nervous system was just on fire at that time. And I would ask them to pull over and I'd say, this isn't about you. It's about me. And I don't want to do this anymore. So I could pivot even in that moment. Wasn't planning on giving that example, but I think it's helpful for you to understand all the different ages that you can just decide you don't want to do something, or while you're doing it, if it's not working, you can stop. That Nanny 911 was the first time that even I had heard, you don't have to do these things. And my experience was with baking with my kids is that Lincoln, pretty much because of ADHD, he was always sugar seeking and would constantly eat, literally just take scoops of sugar while I was baking or scoops of chocolate chips. I couldn't even stop him. There was no impulse control for him. This is 5, 6, 7, even 8 years old. And I found it to be not pleasant for the two of us to be in this encounter trying to bake together when the whole time I'm basically yelling at him to stop eating sugar. I was like, what is the point? Why are we doing this? So if a moment doesn't feel like it's aligned and you're struggling and you're trying to stay calm and you're getting all this resistance, or you're just getting resistance inside, or your kids are resisting, sometimes we just need to pivot away. Either not do that activity right now, not do it at all, or figure out a different way to get that thing you're chasing, either the chocolate chip cookies, done while still connecting with your kids, just being creative and figuring out a different way to get the result that you're going after. The other example I wanted to share was also about baking. And it happened recently with a client of mine. We're talking about making Rice Krispie treats. And her kids were at preschool or, school. And she kind of was like, okay, I want to do something fun with them. I want to connect with them. And I want to bring, we're going to make Rice Krispie treats and then we'll get to eat them and it's going to be fun. And she had kind of thought about it in her head and was excited about it. This is super normal as a parent. We're sitting at home thinking about amazing things we could do for our children, things that we think will be fun, especially in the summer. You're like, oh, we'll make lemonade, or oh, we'll go to the pool, or oh, we'll, go for this walk, or you have ideas in your head of things that you want to do. And it's great. You're a fun mom, right? It's good. But then my client, her kids came home and they just were not into it. It was like they weren't paying attention to her. They weren't listening. They were distracted. They didn't seem interested. And she was really frustrated. She was just disappointed and disappointed mostly, right? And a little bit annoyed. That's totally normal feeling. You have a plan. And then the people you want to do the plan with don't really want to do the plan. You are entitled to feeling disappointed. You are entitled to feeling frustrated. Do not judge your feelings. Allow for them. Give yourself some compassion. Pause. Use the pause break. Reset. Go, I feel a little bit disappointed. I feel a bit sad. This isn't really working out. Have some space and just pause the activity. Pause the experience so that you can reflect a little bit and give yourself some soothing. Once you have validated your emotion, it's a lot easier to get creative and to pivot and to think about a different solution. Now, what's cool is my client, she did do that. At first, she was a little bit annoyed. She was frustrated. She was kind of barking at the kids just for a second, which is normal. And she caught herself, which is really most of the battle is catching yourself when you're not calm. She said, you know what, guys? You go outside. You go play. They have a nice yard where they can play. And I'm going to make these on my own. And they were not bothered. They went outside and she stayed in and she could see them. They were safe. Everybody was safe. No problems here. And she kind of just made the Rice Krispie treats. And then when they were done, she came out. She said, hey, guess what? They're ready. And then they all enjoyed them. And I love that example of pivoting, of finding something that you think is going to be really fun and then finding out that it's not as much fun as you thought it was going to be and switching gears. And that's what I think about as a parenting pivot. Sometimes I think of this parenting pivot as structure submits to spirit. I'll say that again. Structure submits to spirit. Now, I got this phrase from a church that I went to for a long time. It was one of their core principles. And the idea is that we have a basis of routine or where we're going or a structure to an an event, an activity, an afternoon, a morning, or whatever the thing is that you're structuring. My work week, right? I have a structure to how I take care of my body. I have a structure to how I relate to, in my relationships, how I relate to my husband or whatever it is. And I have a plan, right? I have an idea. I have a sort of routine. And then something happens. Something, maybe an illness, or maybe an opportunity, or maybe a struggle, or somebody else's big feeling cycle. Something happens and I need to submit to that thing, to the spirit of the moment, to the spirit of the week. So the structure is there and it's very important. And the plan and the idea, you can't have a family without an adult, without a grown-up who has a general idea of how things are going to go, what time it is and when people are going to eat, and kind of a basic structure. That's also true for activities. If you have open-ended every single day of the week, all summer long, and your kids are kind of out of bounds, they might need some structure, right? So sometimes we have structure, sometimes we have the spirit, but in general, most families work well when there's a basic flow or rhythm that you can always connect back to, a routine or rhythm or flow for the day, for the week, for how your kind of activities go, how dinner goes, how bedtime goes, how cleanup goes. There's this idea that there's some sort of routine, there's some sort of structure, there's some sort of plan. And we need to be able to submit to the spirit. And I think of that in parenting as attunement, connecting with the kids that are in front of us, parenting the children that we have, the ones that are in front of us, not the ones we wish we had or the ones we're afraid they'll become. So in the moment when you present, we're going to play Play-Doh, or you present, we're going to go to the pool, or you present, we're going to go to the grocery store, or you present some sort of structure, activity, or plan. It doesn't have to be super final, like in super serious structure. It's just kind of like an idea, right? And you are in your head kind of planning to do that. That's how grown-ups kind of work. But it can be hard if your kids are overly tired, haven't had snack, haven't moved their body. Maybe you want to plan an indoor activity that's quiet and requires a lot of concentration, like making Rice Krispie treats, but you pick up two kids that have a bunch of big body movement energy, or they need to, play loudly or bang something together. Like they may have a different energy that isn't aligned to the activity you plan. Sometimes we plan big pool day, beach day, hanging out outside, and maybe your kids are overly stimulated and they might need a quieter activity. They may need to be brought in and be at home and kind of, play quietly just on the carpet with nice music or whatever it is. Sometimes you might have a social activity planned, 3 birthdays parties in a row on a Saturday afternoon. And you start to realize this isn't going to work. I cannot bring this child, this human, into this environment, or this experience, this event is not working. Now, what happens is parents often judge themselves as being a failure or thinking their kid is wrong because the kid can't do the thing. So it's either something's wrong with me as a mom because I can't get my kids to be willing to, do Rice Krispie treats or whatever. Or something's wrong with my kid because they can't seem to settle down or calm down or whatever. And you're judging that moment and you're making it mean a bunch of stuff about the future, about the past, about you, about your character, about your skills, about your children. And it's really unfair. Being present, being in the moment is about kind of perpetual creative response to whatever is happening. That's what my life coach, Martha Beck, the coach I trained under, she always says, we want to be in perpetual creative response to whatever is happening. And we cannot be in a creative response if we are judging ourselves, if we are in a big feeling cycle ourselves, if we're angry, if we're hurt, if we're disappointed. It's hard to get creative. So we have to, settle ourselves, connect, be like, wow, I really thought this was going to go a different way. Feeling a little disappointed, feeling a little bit sad. That's okay. I'm entitled to my feelings, but I am the leader. I do need to figure out what is best for everybody. And I might need to pivot. And that might look like not going to an event that you thought you were going to go to. It might look like having put all the Play-Doh out and all the fun stuff out and then having to put it all away, or planning to do something that then you can't do. This happens a lot because of illness, because of weather, right? We're always pivoting. We're always trying to figure out how to deal with what's in front of us as people, because life is kind of, uncertain. We have a plan, we have a structure, and then we might have to pivot. We might have to submit to whatever is happening. And it can be hard to go back to someone and say, you know what, I love you to pieces, but I'm not going to be able to do that play date. I know we said we were going to meet at the pool, but we can't. Something like that. I know I said I was going to make something for the baked goods sale, and that just did not happen in my family yesterday. And have a lot of acceptance and compassion for yourself. If you own your story, other people will own it. And if they judge you, that's on them. One of my foundational principles in life, my guiding principles, is I choose peace and harmony over stress and perfection. And I came up with that when my kids were 3 and 5, because I just decided I wanted to have a peaceful home. I did not want to fight my children, especially about fun stuff. I didn't want to create an environment where I was angry with them and I was frustrated all the time and I felt, overwhelmed. And this is an old pattern for me, and maybe you can relate, is that I have always had a bit of struggle with response flexibility, with being flexible, with being creative, with pivoting. My hypervigilance and my anxiety from some of my traumas as a child have set me up in a way where I am overproductive and over planning. I have grown a lot in this. I feel this is much less true for me. But as a mom, I was really scared that if I wasn't overly planned, that my kids would then act out, I would not stay calm, and then I would lose my crap on them and I would be a bad mom. And so the way I had coped with that thought is that I was just really highly organized, highly planned, highly rigid. I was not that flexible. And I thought that that would keep me very safe and that it would keep my kids safe. And in many ways it does. Like I said, structure is really helpful. Having a plan is a really good idea. But what I needed to grow in, and what I'm offering to you, is to grow in that response flexibility, to be less rigid and more like a reed that blows a little bit in the wind. It's not like a tumbleweed scattered all around the city. It's just a willow tree or whatever, or a reed in a swamp. I don't know where reeds are. And they just sway, right? They don't move. They're not leaving. They're swaying. They're moving with the flow of what is happening in their environment. And it's not something that you are going to do immediately, right? It's something you can practice, just like that mom. At first she got upset and she was like, this isn't working. And she kind of sent the kids outside, and then she reset herself. She realized that that's what the kids needed to do. She kind of putzed around in the kitchen, finished her project and pivoted. And then they came back together. She could have ditched the whole Rice Krispie treat thing and went outside and played with the kids. She did it, which is great because she kind of got the thing that she wanted done and they all enjoyed it together. So that's the other thing, is that sometimes we think, like I said in the beginning, you think you have to do things together. You think you need to do things with your kids in order to be a good mom, and you don't. There are also times where you think, I'm going to do this fun thing. It's going to be great. I remember Sawyer and I wanting to learn how to make candy. I think we were making hard candy. What are they called? Like Jolly Ranchers. And it was a really involved process. We had to get molds. We had to get this certain type of salt and a temperature thermometer thing. It was a lot of work. And there were days where, he's like, let's make that. And I was like, nope, I can't. I'm not into making Jolly Ranchers right now. Sorry, buddy. I was pivoting in advance. I just knew I didn't have capacity for that. Now, if I would have said yes and I needed to stop, I just want you to know it's okay. It's okay for your kids to be disappointed. It's okay for you to be disappointed. Those feelings are temporary. You will move through them. The last story I wanted to share with you, and I've shared it before on the podcast, in the episode called Grumpy Moods. And I realized that episode was over 3 years ago, which is crazy that this podcast has been on for 3 years. Super cool. So you can go back and listen to that one because I talk about how to deal with grumpy moods, either yours or your kids or whatever. But this parenting pivot, it reminded me of this story where one of my sons, we were all going bike riding and we were in Yosemite and it was getting really, really hot. And we stopped along the trail so that we could go into the river and cool off. And he did not want to go in the river. He was like, there was too many bugs. He was overstimulated. It was, too hot. And he just wanted to stay out. And I felt very attached to this idea that we were all going to cool down in the river. I don't know if I wanted like a family experience or what, or I just didn't want to worry about him being hot. I just had an agenda. I was attached to a certain result. And we were like cajoling him and like, come on, get in the water. It's nice and cool. What's wrong? We did all this behavior that isn't very loving. And we were like, come on, hurry up. Come on, come in. Da, da, da. And then finally there was this point when I realized that I could pivot from my expectation or my need for him to go in. And I just let it go. And I decided to enjoy myself in the water and let him enjoy whatever he was doing. And what happened in that moment, in that pivot, is that the whole energy shifted between the four of us. Because I settled down as the emotional leader in my family, then my other family members settled down, my husband and my older son. And we all were like at peace, and we weren't attached to our need for it to be everybody in the water. And then we started to include him in a way that he felt like he could participate. So instead of putting him on the outside as if he was not part of the group, we were like, oh, great, you can bring us stuff from our backpacks. And he loved it. And he had a little job and he was going to the backpack to get us a water or get us chips or whatever, take this towel back to their bikes. And it ended up really a fun experience because I was able to detach and pivot and shift into an acceptance and allow for people to be people, allow for people to have big feelings or whatever they had going on, allow for my feelings and my desires to be met, and trusted that was going to be okay, and it was. And that's what I've learned over and over and over again with my family and with the hundreds of families that I've coached, is that as we allow for emotion and we accept it and we validate it, and we trust that person is going to figure out how to deal with the circumstance, then things work themselves out. That you can have more peace if a moment is frustrating or a struggle. You can trust that whatever your instinct is to shift it, to quit, to do it later, to disengage, have you do it separate from the kids, whatever that looks like, you can trust your intuition and trust that things are going to settle down. Sometimes what's interesting is when the parent becomes detached from any particular need from the child to participate in a certain way, the child and the parent kind of emotionally separate, not in a abandonment or neglectful way, just as in a differentiated way. And the parent starts to do their own thing and allows the child to do their own thing. A lot of times the child will seek back in to play with the parent again and participate in whatever the parent wanted to do. That did not happen in the river in Yosemite, but I was okay either way. And that's what truly detached indifference is. Like, it's like, I'm good with whatever goes on here. I'm good with making Rice Krispie treats. I'm good with not. I'm good with making those cookies with my kids. I'm good with not making those cookies with my kids. It's funny, as I'm sharing this, I'm remembering this story of me being around 12 years old, and somebody gave me a game of pickup sticks. I don't know if you know this game, but essentially it's a bunch of sticks that are really thin, like long toothpicks almost. And you hold them in a stack and you let them go, and then they are kind of all fall on top of each other. And then the idea is to take another stick and you pick up one stick at a time without taking two sticks. I think that's the whole point of it. So I'm like 12 years old and I received this gift. And I was like, this is the dumbest present. This is my attitude at 12, by the way. So if you have a 12-year-old, just know that they could become quite lovely. But I was like, this is the dumbest game ever. Who would ever want to play this? This is so stupid. This is dumb. And I was just like, ugh. I was just really, really snarky and rude about it. And then a few minutes later, my mom and her friend and all of the other kids started playing it. They were like, okay, don't play it. No one was being mean to me. I was just in my own grumpy mood. No one was rude. No one was like, you don't get to play with us because you're being a, bad attitude. No one said that. My mom was never really like that. She's just like, okay, we're going to play. You don't have to play. And they start playing and everyone's like laughing and they're trying to, figure it out. It's a little bit like Jenga, but with sticks. And everyone's like laughing. And I kind of sulk over a little bit, kind of slowly, kind of curious, watched for a second, realized it wasn't as stupid as I thought it was. And then I pivoted and I was able to say like, oh, can I play? That's the beauty of being neutral and letting kids go through their big feelings, is that then when they are through them, there is an opening for them to join back. When we don't use our anger to shame our kids or guilt them or put pressure on them, no one said to me, aren't you grateful that my friend gave you this present? You should have a nice attitude. Like no one said anything. My mom was just like, it's okay. You don't have to play it. And I went through my grumpy mood and then I pivoted. That is the beauty of allowing yourself to pivot, allowing your children to switch from one emotion to another without getting too attached to a specific agenda or a specific behavior that you want to see in your kids. This is a practice for sure. It's not something you need to perfect. It's not something you need to do well every time. Just be aware of it. And the way you become aware of it is, that didn't go so well and I got super grumpy about that. Where could I have pivoted? Or when you're noticing you're grumpy, just be like, this isn't working. I don't want to do this anymore. And then give yourself permission to change. Give yourself permission to separate. Now, of course, when I talk about separating from your kids, I don't mean like you leave and you leave small children home alone. Of course, safety is like a fundamental need in any parenting model. You're not like, oh, I want to go to the pool and you kids don't, so I'm going to leave you here at home and they're 5 and 8. Like, no. We just pivot in a way that feels safe and respectful and where everybody can get their needs met. Oh, one last thing I want to say about this. Most of the time, the thing that we want isn't the experience itself. It's the feelings that come with that experience. So if you want to have fun and connection with your kids and you think you're going to get fun and connection with your kids by doing this activity, and then they are not having fun and you don't feel connected, pivot towards something else where you can still chase fun and connection. Sometimes we are not looking for fun and connection with our kids. We're actually feeling guilty and we want to feel better, and we're using our kids' emotions to help us soothe and feel better. I don't want you to do that. I want you to be able to meet your own emotional needs. If you're chasing fun, if you're chasing connection, then go do something that's fun for you. Invite your kids along. And if they don't want to do it, let them do their own thing. If they're really resistant and they can't shift on their own and they can't play alone, then figure out how you can get that feeling that you want in the moment with your kids. Again, not something simple to do. This requires some emotional awareness, some self-compassion, some creativity, and you get better and better and better at it. So this episode is really to give you awareness and hopefully some strategies so that you feel more confident when you do need to pivot, and some ideas of how to do that. All right, mamas, I hope you're having a good summer so far. Don't forget about the summer toolkit that's available on my website. And that has a bunch of different strategies. We also have a summer playlist for all the podcasts that have to deal with summer. So go to the website, calmmamacoaching.com, go to free resources, and you will see the summer toolkit. The other thing I want to remind you of is that I'm doing a talk with front row moms about the Calm Mama process, where I'm going to teach how to move from chaos to calm within yourself and within your family. That is June 19th, Thursday, June 19th at 10:30 Pacific. It's $45, but if you're on my newsletter, you get a coupon code so that you can participate in that event for free. So be sure you're on the newsletter. If you need the coupon code, let me know. You can respond to any email you receive from Calm Mama Coaching, and we will get that code to you. So I hope to see you there. That's next Thursday, June 19th, 10:30. Tons of good resources for you. I hope to talk to you next week. Have a good one. Hey mama, if you enjoyed this podcast episode, I want to encourage you to do two things. The first is go to my website, calmmamacoaching.com, and get a copy of the Stop Yelling cheat sheet. You'll get a step-by-step breakdown of the most important tool I teach, which is the pause break. And you'll also get 40 ideas to reset your body and balance your nervous system so you don't have to yell at your kids. You can get a copy of that, again, at my website, calmmamacoaching.com/stop yelling. The other thing I'd love for you to do is go to Apple Podcasts and rate and review this podcast so that other moms can discover empowering and helpful, practical parenting strategies, just like you did today. Thanks so much for listening to the podcast. It means a lot to be in your ear every week and to support you on your parenting journey.